Welcome to this edition of Photofocus webinar series. Today's discussion is about in-person workshops. We want to know, are workshops students attend in person worth the money? Are they worth the time? And how are they different from free internet video tutorials? Hello, I'm Kevin Ames, Director of Content for Photofocus, and I'm here also with Reid Callanan, who is the founder of the Santa Fe Workshops. And Reid is going to help us discuss these questions. Santa Fe is currently in its 30th year of offering photography courses and workshops. And I'm very excited to have you here, Reid. And you're joining us from Portland, Maine.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for asking me and inviting me.
Well, we're awfully glad you're here. I have great respect for the Santa Fe Workshops, and I've had the opportunity to know some of your instructors, and you really offer a first-class product. So let's get right into the question. Are they worth it? And if they are, why is that the case?
Kevin, you may expect my answer to be in the positive, and it is. I've been involved in taking workshops and running workshops for 42 years, so basically my whole adult life. I took my first workshop in 1975 at the Maine Photographic Workshops in Rockport, Maine. It was a 2-week class in black and white photography, and I was just out of college, 23 years old, and had been dabbling, seriously, but dabbling in photography for 2 or 3 years prior to that, working in the darkroom. Basically was self-taught at that point, learning through books, learning through people that I knew that could teach me something. And I will say that the 2 weeks that I spent in that workshop with Craig Stevens in Rockport rocked my world. I learned more in 2 weeks than I had in 2+ years of, in a sense, struggling on my own to learn how to make better pictures, learn what photography was all about. So that experience woke me up, changed my life, and I decided to listen and to, as best I could, make the workshop world my life. And here, 42 years later, I've done that. I've been involved in either taking or running workshops for 42 years.
Well, I would imagine that since you're producing workshops, you've been able to sit in on some amazing learning experiences. And how does a live workshop differ from, say, an internet tutorial? Or back in the day when you and I were coming up and learning, we read Popular Photography, American Photographer, and learned from the magazines, from articles. The internet is the new magazine, so live versus internet. Can you compare and contrast a little bit for us?
Absolutely. The biggest difference, Kevin, is what I call experiential education. That's what we offer in Santa Fe. That's what most workshops offer, is the experience of being with a group of people and an instructor and learning by doing. That's really what experiential education means, is learning by doing. And there's a Chinese proverb that says this more eloquently than I can. And the proverb says, we listen and we forget. We see and we remember. We do and we understand. Now, because all of you have probably forgotten that already because of the first one, we listen and we forget. You know, the old adage, in one ear and out the other. Listening to something is not a great way to learn something, because our brains just can't absorb it. It's not possible for us to really learn something by simply listening. The second step in this process that the proverb talks about is seeing something. You see it on a screen, you see it live in the world. That seeing it, in addition to hearing it, starts to make whatever you're trying to learn sink in. But the third and the most important part in this process of experiential education is doing it. So you've got to physically do it yourself. Work with a camera, work with a light, work with a model, go out in the field. Doing it and experience it in your whole body is what really makes it sink in. learning on a screen is only one step in the process and a limited step in my estimation. You've got to combine the listening, the seeing, and the doing for it really to sink in. And then you got to do it over and over and over and over again. And in that process of doing it over and over and over again, then the real learning kind of sinks into who you are, and you know it. That's the only way that I can say comfortably that you learn something is to do it in that three-step process.
Well, it's practice. If you buy a really good camera, it doesn't make you a photographer any more than buying a fine guitar makes you a great guitarist. I can go out and buy a guitar. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to get up on stage with YouTube or U2 and play along. There are very few astrophysicists and bass players as an homage to Brian May of Queen. So we have to practice our craft. How do workshops help us practice?
Well, that's the nature of the workshop environment. Is you're in a setting, hopefully a beautiful setting, and Santa Fe is, and San Miguel is, and Havana, Cuba is. Those are the three main locations that we use to base our workshops out of. So you're in this really magical setting with beautiful light, and you have an instructor whose job it is to lead you through the process of learning whatever it is, whether it's lighting or how to use your camera better, or something a little bit more esoteric, like just how to make a big picture that's more compelling, that says what you want to say, that more nebulous part of the photography process that is so important. And so their job is to set you up in a week-long workshop, or how long you have, to run you through that process of giving you more information and then giving you assignment and going out and making pictures with that assignment and then processing those pictures, probably in Lightroom, and then bringing them back to the class and having your instructor look at those pictures in a group setting. So in Santa Fe, we project the images on a screen in the front of the classroom, and it's the instructor's job to look at 4 or 5 or 6, whatever they choose, from each student in the class based on the assignment that was given the previous day, and talk about those pictures. And then you go out and you do it again, and you do it again. So that's the practice part. I think a 5-day workshop is the best length of time, and that's what we have found in Santa Fe works the best. It's a chunk of time, no question about it. But we found that to devote 5 days to doing something that you feel is really important, and if you choose to come and take a workshop, it's obviously something that you're passionate about, that you feel is important in your life.
Well, 5 days is a long time, but that's also a great amount of time to learn. And it sounds like the program is really well set up. How many days, not how many days, but how much time during the day is involved in actual instruction versus making photographs? Or does that vary from workshop to workshop?
Yeah, that's a good point. It does vary from workshop to workshop, but in general, there are 4 or 5 hours a day in a classroom setting. Typically, a typical workshop day, at least in Santa Fe, would be getting up early, getting up for dawn, getting up for pre-dawn, getting up for that beautiful light and making pictures, oftentimes on your own, sometimes in a group field trip, but oftentimes on your own. Breakfast, and then classroom typically starts at 9 o'clock. And you go till lunchtime, and in those 3 to 4 hours, there are lectures, there are demos from the instructor, and importantly, there are critiques, I just mentioned, of the work that you shot the previous day. And then lunch on campus, the classroom time may spill over after lunch if there's a guest lecturer that comes in. And we have so many great photographers who live in Santa Fe. One of the favorite things that our instructors do who teach in Santa Fe is to tap into the local photographic base in Santa Fe and have Kurt Marcus or Tony O'Brien or Norman Mouskoff or William Clift, any number of great photographers who live in Santa Fe, come in and give a little guest appearance, show work, talk about what they're working on. And then usually 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, classes go out in the field. Sometimes that's in group field trips. Sometimes it's individual shooting. But you're out shooting from 3 till 7, 8, 9, however long you want to last. And oftentimes you're getting back together with people for dinner, a late dinner, talking photography late in the day. Most people are, going to sleep at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. They're long days, they're intense days, but they're so much fun. They're invigorating, they're energizing. There's nothing like that learning experience
Well,
in 5
is there a
days.
lot of interaction between the attendees? Is that part of the draw of a live workshop?
That's another good insight, Kevin. You've probably taken workshops because that's
Taught
something
a
that's
few too.
overlooked. You taught a few. That's good. You know from where you speak. From my perspective, that's one of the hidden secrets, if you will, of taking a workshop is what you learn from your fellow participants. You know that when you go to a workshop, you're going for an instructor, and that trust, that focus is not misplaced because that instructor, if they're worth their experience and worth the experience, are going to give you what you came for. What you probably didn't know was that you'll learn a huge amount and maybe as much from your fellow participants because they're going to offer you insights into your work, into their work, technical pointers. It's a huge learning experience, not just focused on the instructor, but the staff that we have assembled, the participants, they all are really passionate and pretty experienced photographers. If you're going to spend $2,500 or $3,000 on a week, then you're really serious about making pictures. And it's not just professionals. Our core audience right now in Santa Fe are people over 50, between 50 and 70, who have a passion for photography and are pretty much amateurs at it. They're serious, they're good, but they're amateurs. They do it because they love it. They don't do it because they're making a living at it. We don't see that many pros these days. For pro-level classes we do, but in general, it's an advanced amateur audience that we have at the workshops now. In the first 10 years, from 1990 to 1999, 2000, it was mostly a pro-based audience that we were catering to. Then digital came along, replaced silver halide, and professional photographers had to invest a huge amount of money in gear, in buying digital cameras, software, and so education for them at that point became challenged, and so our customer base changed at that point. We're working now to bring the pros back by offering more pro-level classes. We're working hard in Santa Fe to bring our younger audience photographers to the mix because that's important for all of our businesses. It's just to have more diversity in our programs and in our customer base.
So what are the younger photographers wanting to learn?
Well, there are a lot of photographers that come to Santa Fe that are, I would say, between 25 and 35. And they are the emerging pros. They are the people that are working as assistants now. These are the folks that have made a decision to build a career in photography. And they realize that they need education to set themselves apart from everybody else. So they're taking the lighting classes with the big name lighting instructors like Jeff Lipsky and Albert Watson. And so they're taking the pro level classes. So it's nice to see these young people coming to Santa Fe and not just going to the internet to get
right.
You expect them to just be on the internet, but they're not. They're actually deciding that they want to make the investment in actually physically going to Santa Fe, being around 12 or 14 photographers that are probably similar to them in their age and in their experience level, and take a workshop from somebody they really admire in the field. So we're seeing a fair number of those people come in Santa Fe, which is great. I love those kind of classes.
Well, we've got some video of one of the workshops, actually a couple of the workshops, both, and you have studios, I've noticed. So could you talk to that a little bit?
We have a studio, not studios, but we have one studio that's set up for our lighting classes. And it's a 3,000 square foot studio space that this video that's just being queued up now is of week number 4 that we just finished in our summer season. That's Nick Fancher, who is the instructor, right center there. And what Nick does is he uses color gels and he uses projection. So he uses digital projectors to project onto the background, and then the model will stand in front of the projector, so it's projecting on them, but also on the background. That's a technique that he has worked on a lot in the last number of years. He has a body of work called Chroma and a book called Chroma. So the name of this workshop is Chroma. And so it's teaching the students his techniques and then letting the students go out and make their own images with the ideas that he has instilled in them initially. This is a class with Eddie Soloway called A Natural Eye, the Summer Landscape. And it's a landscape-based workshop, which in New Mexico is kind of one of the things you want to do because the landscape is so different from most parts of the country and so spectacular. And the southwestern landscape is just like devoid of vegetation, so you can see the landscape kind of stripped bare. This is a workshop with Kira Crowell, this is a black and white workshop. There's Kira. And they're photographing models at a location that we have set up in advance. The sweeping landscape there, this is the location that people are making pictures in. So this class is about black and white, and it's called The Language of Black and White. And it's really focused on what the difference is between black and white and color photography, why choose one over the other, what's the language that you use when you start talking about black and white photography. And so it's, in a typical week for us in the summer season, we have 4 or 5 different workshops. This is Cotton Miller in a workshop called Experimental Printmaking. So he's using all kinds of different techniques to make prints, from traditional to cyanotypes, to gum bichromate prints, to prints on metal. So that was a really exciting new class for us. This is a class with Nevada Weir that's about telling stories, travel. This is Tony O'Brien on a class that he did called Seeing Light. So as you can tell, there are many, many different subject matter and classes going on in one week in Santa Fe. That's Tony right there, the teacher for this class. We do have a small number of iPhone workshops that we just finished up a weekend workshop last weekend with Noreen O'Brien that was full with 12 people in it. So there's a lot of interest in learning how to better use a mobile camera. It's a part of photography that you can't ignore. Everybody has a phone. Everybody has a phone with a camera. Oftentimes the best camera is the camera you have. And you always have the phone with you. However, that being said, you and I, Kevin, both know that the iPhone is not going to compete with a good DSLR or a mirrorless camera.
Right.
Of the different features, the quality of the lenses, the size of the prints you can make. There's a huge leap between using a simple mobile camera, mobile phone with a camera in it, and let's say a Nikon Z mirrorless camera.
Absolutely. So you were talking earlier about black and white, and you provided us some black and white images, and I wanted to go to this first one, and it's really an amazing image. Is that Mount Fuji in the background?
That's Mount Fuji. This is an image from Kira Crowell, who we just saw in the video, teaching the class called Language of Black and White, and an image that she made, obviously in Japan. She travels a lot throughout Asia, and she has decided that her statement in photography is better made with black and white imaging. And so her class was about that idea of the power of black and white that you and I learned, Kevin, early on.
Absolutely.
In our darkroom days. And it's not as obvious today because everything's kind of captured in color. You have to make a conscious choice to convert your images from the color raw file into black and white. And that's what her class was about. That's a beautiful image. I love this, the starburst coming there from the sun.
It's glorious. I think that black and white now is so much more interesting than it was when we were doing it because of all the filter combinations we've got available in converting an RGB file to grayscale. It's really amazing, and I know you guys teach all of that. But I do want to move on to another photograph that really caught my eye, and it's this one right here. Can you tell me a little bit about this and
Sure.
what's
This
going
is
on?
a
It's an
picture
amazing image.
from a photographer named Allison Wright, who she travels the world as a single woman, which is brave and courageous in itself, to oftentimes war-torn countries, to countries that are having a real serious problem with poverty and just and her whole focus in her photography is making a difference in the world through photography, which we know is a huge factor in terms of being able to change people's impressions of what's happening in the world. So this is an image that she made that is about a war-torn orphan, really. Well, I'm not sure it's an orphan, but it's a little girl that has been affected certainly by the horrors of war, and you can see it in her posture. This little figure surrounded by a pretty rough place, it looks like to me. And so Allison's workshop this summer was about how you as a photographer can use your skills, can use your images to change the way we live the world, to change the way people think about the world, just to institute change. And so she had a full class of 14 people that worked on picture stories in Santa Fe, developing their skills as documentary photographers, focusing on the aspects of life that they really feel strongly about need change. And we all know that photography and the power of photography can do that, but you have to have the skills, you have to have the background, you have to know sort of how to pull that off. And Allison is a master at it, and we are lucky to have her for the first time this summer in Santa Fe teaching, and she'll teach again for us,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, the power of photography is pretty impressive, and it's universal. And one of the things that's coming up is World Photography Day, which is August 19th. And one of our partners, Drobo, is doing a contest. It's free to enter, and I think it's something you'll have a lot of fun with. These are some of the entries that are there. There's $4,000 worth of prizes, including Drobo protected storage units, $1,000 Sigma lens, and backup software are all available. So there's a lot of things going on in this contest, and you can see the URL to enter, or you can go to Photofocus and search for the contest, and you can see some of these entries. They're really terrific images, and I think this speaks to what you were talking about in black and white, Reid. And I want to show one more and encourage everybody to enter before August 15th. Cutoff is midnight, August 15th. And we'd love to see what you want to share with the world for World Photography Day and how you impact your world through photography. So, Reid, I'm real interested in looking at some more of the photographs that you have from the workshops. And you mentioned that it costs about $3,000. Is that just the tuition, or is other things included in that price?
The $3,000 is a rough estimate on typically what a program costs. Tuitions, at least in Santa Fe, are in the $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 range. And for us, that includes meals. And then you've got sometimes a model fee or location fee on top of that. And then you have housing. So again, you can camp out and cut costs and probably come in between $2,000 and $2,500. You can stay in a hotel and spend $200 a night. You can stay in a hotel in Santa Fe and spend $500 a night. So that's up to you where you want to stay. We have housing on campus, which is very inexpensive. So housing for us is a la carte. You can choose what you want to do. So I threw that $3,000 figure out as a high end for what you would spend on a week with all the tuition, the lab fees, model fees, and housing costs. And that housing cost is going to vary, obviously. So it's expensive. There's no question that's expensive. But in all my years of being involved in running workshops, and that's 42 now, I've had
a long time.
People say, Reid, it wasn't worth it. I didn't get what I expected. That's a tiny, tiny fraction of people who have come and taken workshops and gone away happy. So I am thrilled that the people that do decide to come to Santa Fe and take the time out, and in this day and age, the time is a factor. Time is a big factor as well. Taking 5 days off from your busy life to come to Santa Fe or wherever it is to take a workshop is a huge investment of time. And then on top of that, you've got the cost of the workshop and airfare. So it is an expensive thing to do, and that's kind of the crux of the question here.
Just quickly, what's the payoff for in-person education? I'm going back to the original question versus something you can learn on the internet. What's the payoff? Why is this money well spent?
Well, I will go back to my first statement about experiential education and learning by doing. That is the foundation of what a workshop is. And so my answer is that by taking the time and the money to come and take a workshop, you will learn whatever it is you want to learn on a deeper level, and it'll sink into who you are as a photographer. I don't have a lot of faith in online learning, except on the technical side of things. You can learn how to use Photoshop and Lightroom and maybe how to learn your camera. You can do those kind of things pretty well online. But anything that has to do with how to make pictures that are more compelling, more memorable, more important to you, that is something that I believe you can only do kind of in person with a great instructor who's there in front of you to answer questions for you, and to go out photographing with and to have a meal with. That you don't do that online.
That connection is really invaluable. I want to look at a couple of more photographs and then talk about some of your experiences that you offer that are not in Santa Fe. So What are we looking at here?
Image from Nick Fancher, who we saw in the video, and Nick's class was called Chroma. This is an image that is typical of the kind of work that he's doing now. Really exciting color photographer, young, working for a lot of editorial and commercial clients. It's just a beautiful representative of the motion, the color that he puts into his pictures. So it's indicative of who he is as a photographer and what he taught when he was in Santa Fe a couple of weeks ago. So it's nice to have these pictures from workshops we just finished literally days or weeks ago in Santa Fe.
Yeah, this is very topical. So I've got one more, and this is for the landscape photographers. And I think this is an absolutely stunningly beautiful image. The colors, what we're seeing, and it's not something you see very often, those mixed colors, the greens and the yellows. Share a little bit about it, if you would.
Well, I'm not sure who the photographer is. I apologize for that.
But, no worries.
It's aspens in the fall in Santa Fe, and Santa Fe has one of the largest stands of aspens anywhere in the world. And so it's that wonderful juxtaposition of the aspens against the green, evergreen trees there, and then a little bit of mist or fog, which we don't get a lot of in Santa Fe, but it's definitely a very moody and ethereal kind of image. And that landscape is something that you see over and over and over again in the fall in Santa Fe. I can't stress enough how beautiful and how different the landscape is in the Southwest than any part of the world.
Well, I grew up in the high desert in Idaho, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I have not been to Santa Fe. I've been to Albuquerque several times, and it's stunning country. Mm-hmm. So you also have a couple of other locations that are available for people to take workshops. Cuba is just kind of a new thing, isn't it?
Well, not that new, actually, Kevin. We started going to Cuba in 2010, so we're now 9 years into the Cuba program. And in spite of what our government is doing to Cuba, using it as a political pawn, which is kind of our way, it looks like, the American way, which is a real shame. But in spite of the travel regulations that President Trump just announced in June, we are going to always find ways to take people to Cuba. We'll just switch up how we do things, use a different category. Back in June, they did away with the people-to-people organizations that took groups to Cuba, which we were one of those. So we're just going to find another way to go, another category to use. So we're undaunted in terms of wanting to take photographers and writers to Cuba because it is such a fascinating place. It is this wonderful dichotomy and paradox of a vibrant Caribbean island and a communist dictatorship.
Yep.
You don't get that anywhere in the world, but in Cuba.
Well, before we wrap up, I've noticed, and I think this is very, very exciting, that you're offering writing workshops. And I can't tell you how valuable being able to write has been in my career. And I think it's really amazing that a photographic workshop company, or however you want to put it, would start offering writing. Could you speak to that for just a few moments and then mention San Miguel, and we'll have some closing remarks, and we'll go from there.
Okay. There are two universal languages. There are images and there are words. Those are the two forms that we use to communicate for the most part, through images and through the written word. And so I decided 3 years ago that it was important for us to branch out into the second universal language, words, and offer programming in that arena. And I was also encouraged by a really rich literary community in Santa Fe. There's so many fine authors who live in Santa Fe and that I could tap into as instructors for these workshops. So some of the workshops are a combination of photography and words, and bringing together photographers who want to learn how to write better about their images and writers who want to be better at making images to combine the two. That's one aspect of what we do in our Santa Fe Writers Lab. The other is just straight writing workshops for writers, and their memoir, there's creative nonfiction, lots of different aspects of the writing world. And so we've opened ourselves to a new audience, new creative audience, which is great. It's expanded the business, it's diversified the business, so that's a really good thing. And we've all been introduced to a new community of creative people, writers. And so now we have photographers and writers on campus, oftentimes together, oftentimes separated out in their own programs. So it's been a wonderful addition to our business, and I'm really excited about the future for us for Santa Fe Writers Lab. You mentioned San Miguel.
Yes.
Going to San Miguel in 2001, and that's our fall campus. We've decided that we're just going to pick up and move the operation from Santa Fe to San Miguel for a month in October, which is a perfect month to be in San Miguel. It's in the central highlands of Mexico. It's a very, very safe community, a lot of expats who live there. So even though it's a truly Mexican town, Americans feel safe because there's so many Americans who live there. And so it's a great place to go to do workshops. It's one of the world's most beautiful cities, and it's a great backdrop, a very friendly, gracious place to do our programs out of. So we're now, 18 years with the program most fall in San Miguel. We're going this fall. And this fall we're combining photography and writing.
Oh, wow, that's exciting. What other exciting things do you have going? I mean, how do you keep the momentum going after 3 decades? I mean, I know you repeat some of the workshops, but how do you keep the excitement alive?
Well, the main reason is because we love photography. We love making images. We believe in the power of the medium. Now we love writing. We believe in the power of words as well. So that drives us, just a passion and a level of interest in the subject matter. The momentum is kept going by amazing staff in Santa Fe. We've got a nice balance of staff that have been at the workshop for 25 years, and we've got some people that just started in the last couple of weeks, couple of months. So the staff also has a huge hand in keeping the momentum going. And momentum is kept going because of freshness, of doing new things, of having new instructors, having new students. We also listen well. We listen when people say, you should consider doing workshops in this part of the world, or you should consider doing this kind of a workshop. We all listen well and we go, that's a great idea. Or maybe we'll hold off on that one and do that a little later.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to be with Photofocus today and to share your experiences and to tell people about the true value of in-person photographic workshops and why they're worth it and what people can expect. Reid, you've been awesome. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to having you back on Photofocus in the future. For now, I'm Kevin Ames for Photofocus. Thank you all for watching.